we were going to maybe skip down the road to Bin Laden's library.
Oh, yes.
Let's go to the library, John.
Go to the library. Okay, well, I don't have the library pulled up, but I know, I believe, apparently they're reporting that they found in Bin Laden's library, when they killed Bin Laden, they found his library that he had, some of the books that they supposedly found there.
39 English language books, or English language items, 39 items, they call them.
39. Now, what was one of the ones, Fritz Springmeier's book there?
Bloodlines of the Illuminati, yeah.
Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Apparently Bin Laden was studying bloodlines of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
What
Crossing
else?
the Rubicon, Michael Rupert, Committee of 300, John Coleman, The Conspirators Hierarchy, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins. He's got a lot of these. America's War on Terrorism, Michel Chossudovsky, the global research guy. And Anthony Sutton one too, The Best Enemy Money Can Buy, Anthony Sutton. Greg Palast, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. But my favorite one of all of them, when you go through the whole list and you find it right at the bottom, it says website claims Steve Jackson games foretold 9/11. Article published. This file only contained a single saved web page. So I don't even know if he had all these books physically. He might have just had PDFs on a computer somewhere. But the Steve Jackson games one's funny because that's the Illuminati card game. That's what.
So the infamous Illuminati card game, Steve Jackson, apparently Bin Laden was researching the Illuminati through these mysterious...
Yeah, because I think the original deck came out in the mid-90s, might have even been early 90s, but it's got a Pentagon is on fire, and it's got the one with the Twin Towers says terrorist nuke, and it's got like one of the towers is collapsing, basically. So it does look like it foretold, right, the attack just with those two cards. But there is a lot of Illuminati cards. Like, you go through the decks, there's a lot of whole different ones. So he called Steve Jackson, whoever Steve Jackson is, because nobody is totally sure. There is a few pictures. They say this guy is Steve Jackson, but whoever he is, he knew, he seems to have known a lot.
Yeah, the bloodlines of the Illuminati, like the secrets of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, that's the Fritz Springmeier one.
Yeah. Said Bin Laden possessed Imperial Hubris, a book by the former head of the CIA unit devoted to tracking him, and Woodward's Obama Wars. And the architects of the 9/11 attacks owned both the 9/11 Commission report and a book that claimed 9/11 was an inside job by the U.S. government. David Kartenstein Ross, a terrorism scholar and senior fellow of the Foundation for Defense and Democracy, said Bin Laden used English language sources to prepare material for his fury statements and to help him understand America. There is a very significant change that conjectural work was used to help him understand Western society rather than just being there for pure polemical purposes, which is in of itself interesting. He clearly had a fascination with conspiracy theories, though he almost certainly had a very dim view of 9/11 conspiracy theories, he said. In addition of the books, Bin Laden's library contained academic studies by the U.S. think tanks on terrorism and the Middle East, articles from magazines like Foreign Policy and Newsweek, and the writings of other extremists. The U.S. also declassified 103,000 of Bin Laden documents, 103 of thousands of Bin Laden documents related to Al-Qaeda and Bin Laden's personal life. His collection included wistful messages to his family, including a wife he called the apple of his eye. The detectives and operatives he wanted to stay focused on the United States rather than battle with other enemies or the information of an Islamic State. The cache case included the kind of job applications that employed the same dry tone to ask fill-in-the-blanks questions familiar to corporate and interviewees, any hobbies or pastimes, and the jihadist specific questions like, do you wish to execute a suicide operation? That type of thing. So yeah, it's a whole big thing in here about bin Laden.
So hold on here. Now this supposed bin Laden library filled with every conspiracy book known to man, basically to demonize, any conspiracy theory type book that may be out there. Basically any book that Chapters and Indigo won't sell.
Then they'll say you're with bin Laden.
Wasn't this library supposedly found at the bin Laden compound where they supposedly got him? We got him. Is that where they supposedly found this library, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's where they found it. In
Abbottabad, Pakistan.
So here's what I'm getting at. In order to buy this story that this is, the bin Laden library and he likes all the Illuminati conspiracy stuff and you're basically a bin Laden terrorist if you like to read this stuff too, I have to believe that they actually got bin Laden. And I would love to talk to SEAL Team 6 who supposedly got him, but they all seem to have disappeared.
Yeah, they were killed, yeah.
So, how convenient.
Yeah.
Well, they're trying to say that bin Laden, either they're trying to say bin Laden is like a truth researcher, like they would, the derogatory term, they would call him a truther, I guess. Bin Laden is a truther. But then you look into the actual conspiracy of what happened in that mission in Pakistan is that they killed a guy that was called Akbar Khan. His name was Akbar Khan. He lived in Pakistan.
And that's a Pakistani name.
Yeah, so if this is Akbar Khan's bookshelf, then obviously he was doing the research on this stuff. Because it is actually hard to believe that bin Laden would, like the character that the myth of bin Laden, that he's this character that was proud of, the 9/11 attacks. Why would he ever have, things doubting that he did it? If he called it, his, thing that he did. Why would he, just because he doesn't really have many other books that like aren't really, either 9/11 truth or about how Bush is like doing these failed wars, right? But then, I did notice one of these on here, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, Manly Hall, 1928. It's actually the only one they put the date on. They put brackets with the 1928 in the right beside it. So it's unless maybe that they've re-released the book. So he's got an original edition, Manly Hall, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, and that guy was supposed to be one of the top like Freemason researchers of all time, Manly P. Hall. And they even made the Freemason Library. They've named it after Manly P. Hall. And, it's like,
how many,
that one stands out to me.
Well, how many people would have books on these things? Illuminati. I have videos on Illuminati. I don't have any books, but a lot of people are into this kind of thing. Why would you do that? Bin Laden not be a person to own something like that. Like, and even these things can be planted there as well, just to say, okay, see, he did 9/11, we were right, this type of thing. So, no, it just doesn't hold water, this one.
Well, he's also got Project MK Ultra, the CIA's program for research and behavior modification, joint subcommittee. So it looks like he's got the Senate hearing subcommittee or Congressional Senate hearing on the Committee of Intelligence on MK Ultra, but that one would make sense because with like the brainwashing program they do in Guantanamo, it's like if you believe that you're going to be sent there, then maybe you try to do some research on what their techniques are going to be. But I'm sure you might not be able to get that much out of a Senate report, Select Committee on Intelligence, but you'd probably get some research on it. Because if MK Ultra is a real program, and then, it would just be more advanced brainwashing they can do now. This whole, library though, it's definitely ties into what David Cameron was trying to say is that the problem is not with Islam. The problem is with conspiracy thinking. It's not with it's like the problem of radical Islam is conspiracy theories. He even I forget what the meeting was he said it at. It wasn't the G20, but it was one of the world ones they had recently.
Yeah, don't they want to ban conspiracy theories or something over in the UK somewhere?
Yeah. So he said that's basically he's saying that's the radical agent. It's not the Quran. It's the conspiracy theories.
Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But then that's a whole voting base, and basically David Cameron, whatever he did, he still got the votes, or that's what they say. I guess maybe he could rig an election, but.
Well, this whole thing is clearly just propaganda, made up nonsense with the whole Bin Laden library nonsense. They even had CNN was doing some hit piece, on the whole thing saying that Bin Laden was concerned about climate change and global warming and all this other stuff. And it was just ridiculous. And, like the whole notion that some guy with some really old VHS camcorders in a cave sent out his mercenaries with box cutters to take down the world's largest army and world's, most powerful country and somehow succeeded. And, and that's what happens when you read conspiracy theory books, folks. And that's why we ought to ban conspiracy theories, because Bin Laden, box cutters, VHS camcorders took down America. Could happen to you. So don't you read Fritz Springmeier's books or Mark Dice's books or any of these authors' books about the Illuminati, because you could turn into the next Bin Laden. Yeah. Next thing you know, you'll have an 8-track cassette tape and you'll be taking down some other building in some foreign country.
Like in
Before
Dubai.
you know it.
Yeah.
You won't even know what you're doing.
Hey Daniel, do you have that video of where one of the reporters in Pakistan was like interviewing one of the locals and asking him about Bin Laden, if he was there and blah blah blah, and it was Akbar Khan that lived in the house.
Yeah, it was a BBC clip.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like the BBC that some of it is like. Some of what you could think is that, the BBC is just like a propaganda outlet and they're just putting out fake information. But really it goes against the, what is like the mainstream story, that it was actually Bin Laden's compound, that it wasn't, Akbar Khan's place. And then what they're also showing is the picture that they put out, which I think is even from a video clip. It's the one where he's watching a TV of one of his old videos, and he's sitting there. He's got like a blanket around him and a channel changer. And then the guy says that guy in the picture is his neighbor. That's even a fake picture. if this guy's a real guy.
Yeah.
Like the guy they're interviewing, because they don't really get into much of the interview, and it's also a translated interview. Like you don't hear his voice really much.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Said, yeah, I know him very well. He's my neighbor.
Yeah, that's how the translator says that. Mm-hmm. That's what the guy said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you go with that, and then you go with the other evidence was that they totally destroyed the compound within a few months. It was either a few weeks or a few months. You actually see them bulldozing it down with the bulldozers.
Yeah.
So it's like you'd expect them to release at least what it looked like inside. This doesn't have. I can't find any photos in this Bin Laden's bookshelf. So I'm not sure if he actually had the physical copies of these books or if he just downloaded the PDFs. PDFs I'm sure you could find anywhere in the world, but some of these other books could be a bit rare. Like he's something you'd have to go to conspiracy culture to find, rather than some of these big books.
But I think, I think Pakistan wanted this house demolished because it would bring in too much, it would look like a shrine to people, they want to get rid of it so it doesn't create more problems, stuff like that. So they wanted to bulldoze it down, and it would attract too much attention, right? So they want to get rid of it.
Yeah, so I could see that being fine, but I just think before you do that, you have to go over it like it's a crime scene. Like you have to and then you release all the stuff, like this was this room, this was that room.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But I don't.
Otherwise, people just believe how they did it in Zero Dark 30 was accurate.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I wonder if they found the any photos, like the photoshopped photo of Bin Laden where his face looks like it got hit by an RPG or something. That one, it's from years and years before they announced we got Bin Laden. And then the mainstream news media ran around with the very photoshopped photo where it looks like Bin Laden's face got hit by a grenade or an RPG. And it's all, like mashed in and blown up and messed up. Ran with that when they announced that they had got Bin Laden. With a known photoshopped fake photo of a dead Bin Laden, they used that as the photo. And then within a day by the second day, they had to pull that down and retract that. Now, whether they put a public retraction or not, or they just pulled down the photo, but they were clearly caught using completely fake photos.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was watching CP24 at work, and I noticed that one of the fake or whatever videos of Bin Laden speaking and him wearing a dark beard, right? And I looked at it and said, "This is the one that the CIA brought up. One of the ones that CIA brought up that showing him with dark hair and a dark beard, but basically in their religion they're not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to wear jewelry or anything like that or dye their hair. So that was definitely photoshopped, I think, or video shopped, if you want to call it that.
Well, see, Bin Laden likes to use just for men's hair dye. It's not, and so when I go to get my just for men, I ask for the Bin Laden shade.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Like, it was clearly a different person because it wasn't just different hair color. You look at the facial features, it was clearly a different person. Unless Bin Laden dyed his hair and had nose surgery and chin surgery and mouth surgery and every other surgery known to man so that there was no similar features.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the guy was clearly a different guy than the other guy. Which one was the real Bin Laden? I mean, who knows at that point? I like to call him Osama bin Catman because he's been reported to be dead numerous times before this last We Got Him incident. And I like to think of him as he's got 9 lives, like Osama bin Catman. And we don't know which one they got today. Was it Bin Laden number 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
Or did they just kill one of the numerous photoshopped Bin Ladens?
If anyone out there is interested in finding the website, it's the Office of Director of National Intelligence, DNI.gov. They released it, and it's Bin Laden's bookshelf as they put the main title, and then they've got like a brief paragraph describing what are these things you can click on, and all these lists of the stuff, they declassified material. And in that paragraph, they refer to him as Osama bin Laden with the U.
Osama, yeah.
Yeah. So it's that Bin Laden. It's the Bin Laden that's spelled with a U, because there's another Bin Laden they spell with an O. Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
This was Osama bin Laden.
I think that's probably the way you really say it, or really spell it.
So maybe they're just writing it like that because that's their remind you how to say it, and that it really is all the same guy.
Yeah,
Osama.
Osama is like the FBI wanted poster. Remember the original one?
Yeah, exactly.
It said Osama.
Yeah. So then that FBI wanted poster didn't list the crime of 9/11 of his other crimes. That does list, explosions where less people passed away than 9/11,
But I don't even think he was accused. I don't think he was really had anything to do with those either.
Mm-hmm. Well, if he did, he was definitely like a globalist, because some of those were in like Sudan and stuff, weren't they? They were like in all over the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's, there is, when you look at Bin Laden definitely can be built up as a scary villain because, he was totally connected with, like world like intelligence rings, probably Saudi Arabian royal family and like U.S. intelligence. There's the picture of him with Zbigniew Brzezinski where they're training him to fight, I guess, the Soviet Empire. So it's like, in that sense, then it is he does take on like the scary mythos of who he could be. But then in the other sense, this is also like the perfect character to create if you're going to create a character.
Oh, for sure. Under the guise of Tim Osman.
Mm-hmm.
I agree to that. And, no matter if he's been dead since 9/11 or just around December-ish, because he did have kidney dialysis every month, and he had dialysis treatment actually on September 10th of 2001 in Pakistan, and as well in few months beforehand.
Wasn't he being treated in Dubai as well?
Dubai, yeah. That was, in July 2001.
Yeah, and he had been met with by some U.S. officials that met him there or something too.
Yeah, exactly. And it was run by the U.S. military and the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
So
they say that he had Marfan syndrome or something. Syndrome.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
And that that it would have been very hard to live in the conditions he was living in, and never leaving, because they even say they had scouted the thing for months, and like he never went outside at all, because they had an overhead satellite photo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like, so even
wasn't there witnesses, Mike or Daniel, about the regular doctors or nurses were told to leave, and special people went in there with them?
Right.
Either CIA or otherwise were in there with him for a period of time. Wasn't there some talk of that they were told to leave and other people were put in?
Yeah, I heard about that too. Yeah, you're right, Mark. Where they took out the physicians that were there and put in his own physicians, and they were told to look after him, take care of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that either means they were helping him pass away, or trying to brief him on what was going on. I'm not sure. Maybe telling him not to talk or something like that. Then that's when Bin Laden said...
They had to tell him about the project for a new American century. Because it was the start of a new century, right? It's 2001.
Yep.
They're planning for the next 100 years, basically a new project where America becomes the head of the New World Order. Before giving it to China, I guess.
So while they were putting Osama bin Laden on ice, they were preparing and grooming Obama bin Laden to take over the reins.
Yeah, and that's why they needed to pull a new Pearl Harbor, which is also one of the books on his bookshelf. Did you see that, David Ray Griffin?
Yes, yeah.
Disturbing Questions About the Bush Administration and 9/11 is the sub-headline of the new Pearl Harbor. So I was like, Bin Laden or whoever, Akbar Khan or Bin Laden, whoever's bookshelf this is, would have known a lot of truth research.
Well, I think, why would you bring books from outside of Pakistan when Akbar Khan already had the library there in the first place? Why would you bring in stuff to be planted there and then, then have him go in there and kill this so-called Bin Laden and then take all his library books from him? Doesn't make sense. It would make sense if this Akbar Khan had a library of his own. That would make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they just go in there, kill this guy, whatever, and then and take his books, and then we got Osama bin Laden stuff. Sorry, Osama. All right.
The whole point to this propaganda, in my view, is quite blatantly simple and obvious. It is to equate anyone who has any kind of conspiracy theory, whether it's in terms of 9/11 or other things like the Federal Reserve, the banking system, to basically equate them to the people who supposedly carried out the attacks on September 11th, the terrorists. So basically, if you're a conspiracy theorist, equals Osama bin Laden terrorist. And that's the basic connection the mainstream media is trying to put out there with this propaganda, phony baloney nonsense of Osama bin Laden's library. It's ridiculous. We'll be right back after the break.
He claims the man in the picture is his neighbour.
His name is Akbar Khan. He owns the house they said was Osama's house. I know him very well.
If the aim was to persuade the doubters, it didn't work here.
This picture is not Osama.
It's very suspicious.
This picture.
It is very suspicious.